Okay, let's see here. Okay, we have a lot of people joining right now. Just gonna say hi, everyone. We're just gonna give it a minute just to let everybody else make sure they're in. My name is Curtis. I work for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board, and I'll be telling you about our presenter in just a moment. Thanks. All right, I think we're gonna get started. All right, we've got almost 200 people in here. So thank you so much for joining. Like I said, my name is Curtis. I work for the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. I'll be moderating this panel for Jay. So Jay is a graduate from the University of Waterloo and now works as a national recruiter, connecting with future Waterloo Warriors, answering their questions, and helping them decide if they'd like to study at the University of Waterloo someday. Jay's going to be talking to you about these opportunities. And I will be monitoring the chat. So if you wanted to ask questions, I'll be able to jump in and ask Jay questions for you. But just to let you know, no one can actually see questions except for me. So I'm going to pass it on to Jay, and thank you very much for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, Curtis. And yeah, welcome everybody. Glad to have you joining us today and having Waterloo as part of your launch event where you're going to learn a little bit more about co-op and experiential learning and how this can make you stand out and as a graduate from university, and maybe give you some things to look for as you start doing your research into which school you maybe want to go into. So my name is Jay. As you heard, I use he, him pronouns, and I am a proud graduate from the University of Waterloo. I was in our arts and business program, and I majored in history. I also took advantage of the co-op program, got some great work experiences, some that were related to history, some a little bit more on the business side. Had some work terms on campus as well. And now I am a national recruiter. So yeah, my job, I'm often out in schools chatting with students, usually chatting with grade 12s to help them learn a little bit more about the University of Waterloo and helping them decide if they like to study here, but also happy to promote all the universities in Ontario. So hopefully giving you some things to think about, regardless of which university you might want to go to someday. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the University of Waterloo is situated on the Haldimand Tract, and this is the land that was granted to the Six Nations, and it includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. And across all of our campuses, we are actively engaged in work towards reconciliation, and you often see this through our teaching and our learning and our community building, and much of it is centered through our Office of Indigenous Relations. And we just have a brand new addition on our campus, opened up last month. We have a new outdoor Indigenous gathering space. So especially when we think about learning outside of the classroom, this is going to be a great teaching space for many of our courses to be able to use, as well as a place for social and cultural and ceremonial gatherings as well. So a great addition to our campus in Waterloo. All right, so in our time together this morning, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what experiential learning is and why it's important. And then I'm going to give you some examples that you can look forward to when you're looking into universities. So things that you can get hands-on learning that happens in the classroom, maybe some co-op and extracurricular activities that you can participate in, internships. And then I'm really going to focus on co-op and how that works, because that's something that we brag about a lot at Waterloo. So I'm going to give you some examples there as well. And just a little extra promo. This is going to be kept a little bit more general with Waterloo examples, but later on today, I think it's at 1:45, I'm going to be doing more a Waterloo specific presentation. So kind of a teaser in this one if you're looking for more information there. All right, so when you think about university, you're probably imagining like a large lecture hall. Maybe there's a professor at the front of the room who's speaking to you. There's students in rows and they're quickly writing down notes to capture everything that's being said. This is somewhat accurate. That's probably something that you are going to experience because a lecture is the most common way that an instructor is going to be delivering the course content to you. However, we know that attention spans aren't always the longest, and our notes can only capture so much. So especially at Waterloo, we have a big emphasis on complementing our lectures with experiential learning. So this is the learning that happens where students are directly involved in a learning experience rather than just being the recipients of the content that's said to them. because we know that when students are involved in their education, they're more motivated, they tend to do better, and they're able to take what they've learned and apply it to the real world settings. And when it comes to connecting your education to your future career, you can think of it this way. So university is maybe 4 or 5 years of studying. I'm just going to check one thing here quickly that's coming up on my screen. Sorry about this. I can just move these. Get that. Oh, there we go. Make sure. Okay, one moment. Get back into this one. Sorry about that, everybody. If you didn't get the word search at the beginning, you got another chance there. Okay, here we go. Okay, got it back. Okay, so when it comes to connecting your education to your future career, you can kind of think of it this way. So university is going to be 4 or 5 years of you studying an area of your interest. So for some programs, it's pretty clear what your education, where it could take you in terms of a career. Like if you go to law school, you tend to become a lawyer. And if you go to teacher's college, you tend to go on to become a teacher. So some of those are pretty clear. But for a lot of programs, it's maybe a little bit unknown right now. So by allowing you to participate in hands-on learning, it's not only going to give you experience that employers are looking for, but it's also going to give you some skills and knowledge to show that you're employable, and you can start discovering what options are out there for you. So you're going to find out what you enjoy doing, maybe even what you don't quite enjoy doing so much. But in a nutshell, when you're learning, not just from a lecture and by reading the textbook, but when you're actually getting to do those things and getting that hands-on learning, you're going to become much more engaged in your studies. You're probably going to enjoy it more, which typically means better grades. You're going to discover more about yourself and your interests and what you like and what you're good at. And it gives you the skills and the work experiences that's setting you up for whatever you might get into after university. So let's chat about some of the ways that you can get this experience when you go to university. And again, usually regardless of the university you go to. Okay, so the first way is right away in the classroom. These are experiences that are often built right into the curriculum, and they're part of the how the instructor is going to teach you the content that you need to learn. And at university, we call this the integrated experience. So this can be through labs. These are obviously very hands-on when you get to university. Just a few examples could be in like biology or chemistry labs where you're in the wet labs, you get to conduct actual experiments and you're writing the reports about them, especially if you want to get involved in discovery and things like that. You could have an ecology lab where you get the hip waders on and you get into, at least on our campus, we've got Laurel Creek that runs through there, and you're gathering water samples and then you take them back to the lab to do analysis. Our kinesiology students, they take a human anatomy lab in their first year where they're actually dissecting and observing human cadavers. So like people who have donated their bodies to science after they pass. So we're not just using diagrams, we've got actual cadavers that are in front of us. So we're able to look at like what the muscles look like under the skin tissue, what heart disease actually looks like, things like that. So these are the opportunities that labs are going to allow you to do, and they're often built right into your curriculum and with some of your classes. When it comes to other ways, this can also be through field courses. Not quite the same as high school field trips. Usually they're a little bit more extensive than that. For example, our geography and environmental management students at Waterloo, they recently had the opportunity to do a 2-week Arctic cruise. And they were on vessels that were owned by National Geographic. And while there, they were studying the effects that climate change has had on the Arctic regions and what impact that's having on the human and animal populations there. We also have medieval studies. Our students in medieval studies go to a castle in England during the summer, and they're participating in an archaeological dig to better understand how individuals lived in the 12th century. And these are all ways that you can kind of get some extra credit towards your degree. Yeah, go ahead, Curtis.
Hi, I just have a pretty good question from a student. They're
Sure.
asking, does co-op provide any pay?
Great question. That is something I will get to later on. It kind of depends on the school. Again, I said Waterloo likes to brag about co-op quite a bit. So ours are all paid positions. So I'll talk about that later on. But that's a good question when you start doing your research to ask the individual universities whether their opportunities are paid or not. All right.
Great. Thank you very much, Jay.
You're welcome. So another way that you're going to get some great experiential learning through the classroom is kind of what I'm going to be calling problem solving, because it's a little bit more broad, because it can be anything from maybe partnering with organizations like some of our students. They've worked with Live Nation. They're in our environment and business program, and they act as consultants to use skills and knowledge to provide solutions on things like making concert venues more sustainable. Our math students and finance students are using interactive simulations to plan and predict and enter data to understand in real time how the stock market might react to decisions and different factors. And basically, all of these hands-on learning opportunities are built right into your courses, and they're going to give you not just the theoretical info, but they're going to combine it with practical experiences so that you can really understand, like, firsthand how things work and how you can apply what you've learned. Okay, so that's the interactive experience. Another way that you're going to be able to get some classroom is kind of, or ways that you can learn about yourself, especially not just in the classroom, but these might be things you can get involved in that could be related to your area of study, but really they're driven by you, not your professors, and they're things that you can get involved in when you're part of the university campus. So for example, maybe you're looking at joining student government when you get to university. They focus a lot on like advocacy for students when you get to student government at the university level. Maybe you take on an executive position where you're advocating for the student body. You can get into student leadership roles and residence with the Student Success Office. Maybe you're gaining entrepreneurial skills if you've always wanted to be maybe starting your own business or become a founder. You could participate in one of the startup incubator programs, maybe go to a workshop, get into a pitch competition or something like that. These are all ways that you can, again, gain some extra skills, meet with like-minded students, and continue with your personal and your professional development. Just really quickly, as my example as a student, outside of my classes, I did join the Residence Council. So that was where I had the opportunity to work with resident staff and other students to plan both academic and social programming that students in my building could get involved in. I was part of the student activities team, so I was working on different leadership workshops for students to pursue. And really, I felt that these were great ways to meet people, but also gaining skills that I wasn't necessarily developing from my classes. So especially when it comes to things like leadership and organization and things like that. So things that really look good onto my resume and things that I could work into my interviews as well. And yeah, go ahead, Curtis.
Oh, sorry, my hand was still up. I'm
Oh, okay.
I'm answering some questions on the side right now.
Oh, okay, perfect. Sounds good. And then, yeah, I noticed there's some co-op questions. So I'm 3 slides away from some more co-op info for everybody. But before we get there, another way that a lot of universities offer their students experience, especially when it comes to getting hands-on learning related, is to like related to what you're studying is through internships. So an internship can be paid or unpaid. So just bringing it back to that other question. And it's usually supervised and it's full-time or part-time work. Or it could be like a practice placement related to your area of study. So after completing an internship, students often receive an academic credit. So this goes towards your degree. And a student may complete their internship maybe partway through a program or after you've completed all of your coursework, but before graduating. And they can often vary in length. So often they're usually between like 12 and 16 months, but sometimes can be a little bit shorter or a little bit longer as well. So at Waterloo, we actually don't have a lot of internships. So these are things that if other schools are mentioning them, great to ask them questions about how they work, if they're paid, how you can find those internships, or if they're at set companies and things like that. But again, this is a big way that a lot of schools will give you that extra experience in addition to your studies. But by far the most common way that students get experience during their time at Waterloo is through cooperative education or co-op. And we were actually the first university in Canada to offer co-op, and now we have the world's largest program of its kind. So it's a very well-established program, and a big reason why a lot of students decide to come and study with us. Because beyond getting real job experience for your resume, co-op is going to prepare you for the future of work, which is changing rapidly. And I think it's about 90% of students at Waterloo are enrolled in a co-op program, and that's from all 6 of our faculties. So whether you're thinking about a program that's maybe in theater or biology or geological engineering, co-op could be an option for you in a way to kind of complement your studies. So how does co-op work? It's a bit different than the system that you might be familiar with in high school. Basically, students are going to start co-op during their first or second year, and you're going to alternate between 4-month study terms on campus and 4-month work terms with an employer. So this creates a cycle where your classroom learning is going to make your workplace contribution stronger, and then your work experiences are going to enhance what you're learning in the classroom, and you go back and forth until you graduate. So a great thing about co-op is that you don't have to wait until after graduation to start your career. In our unique co-op program, you're going to be able to get to try out up to 6 different jobs, and you're going to be gaining up to 2 years of paid work experience, and you're going to be building a really great network of professional connections along the way with all the employers that you worked with as well. And yes, coming back to that other question again, these are paid experiences, at least at Waterloo. Sorry, I didn't change my slide there. At least at Waterloo. And Waterloo students are typically earning anywhere between $9,000 to about $22,000 for their first work term. And then you've got the opportunity to gain even more as they gain more experience. So that's a great way to get some extra funds that can then go towards your tuition as well. I will note that getting a co-op job, again, at least at Waterloo, is a competitive process. So our students do apply for jobs and they go to interviews. But this is really great experience to get used to the job search process, because by going through it, especially 5 or 6 times, you are going to become like a real pro at putting together a resume and feeling pretty confident going into the interviews with these employers. And then luckily, you're going to have access to an exclusive list of more than 8,000 employers from 75 different countries who are hiring Waterloo students every term. And this is a great way, again, to test drive different careers and figuring out what you like and what you don't like, and kind of polishing your professional skill set. For example, as a history student, I always thought I wanted to work at a museum. So my first work term was at a museum. And about 3 weeks in, I realized I never wanted to work at a museum again. And that's just kind of the related to the type of work I was doing. I was working with artifacts. So I was in kind of like the dungeon of the museum with shelves of artifacts that don't come to life like they do in the movies, and just doing a lot of research on items. So it wasn't really overly exciting for me, but I'm glad I figured that out in my second year. My last work term, though, I had the opportunity to work as a business consultant with the Royal Glasgow Concert Hall, which was in Glasgow, Scotland. So pretty cool to try living and working in another country for 4 months. And also realized that like the business side of my program much more than I thought. So that's another great advantage of co-op again. Find out what you like, but also what you don't like. And with Waterloo, we're going to be partnering with some big names like Microsoft and Deloitte, Manulife, Tesla, MasterCard, Habitat for Humanity. So we're going to be creating some pretty unique opportunities for our students to tackle real life challenges. And it's not just photocopying or coffee runs. Actually, it isn't that at all. You're going to be directly contributing to the workplace with your skills and your experiences. And again, co-op is something we brag about a lot at Waterloo. So if you want to learn a little bit more, you can tune into one of our presentations later on. Okay, so it doesn't really start there though. We've got some other things here. Where we got? Oh yes. So we did a survey a couple years ago, and we found that Waterloo co-op grads tend to have higher employment rates and higher starting salaries 6 months after graduation compared to the Ontario average. And I think a big reason for that is because when you graduate, you not only have a degree, but you've got so much great experience as well. You've got that work experience, a really set resume, you've got those connections that you've made. So our students find it just that much easier to step into a career or into graduate school or professional school after you complete your studies, and usually more likely to step into a career that they know they're really passionate about as well. Okay, so whether it's co-op or an internship or their labs and studios and field courses and field trips, your resume can really stand out by all of these things that you're getting involved in, and future employers are really going to take note. So I really encourage you, when you're doing research into universities, is see what experiential learning opportunities exist there and how students are able to add to more than just their classes and their studies. So again, for us and Waterloo students, they get really excited by being able to add like 4 or 5 unique work experiences to the resume by the time that they graduate, able to try something new, test drive different careers that they maybe haven't heard of before, and really prepare for these like future ready skill set that they're going to need regardless of the workplace they go into. And even if it's your first work term isn't your dream job, it's still going to get you great skills that are going to set you up to what you could get into later on. So yeah, those are things that I recommend you look into as you start doing your research. And I think we've got lots of questions that have been coming in, Curtis. So I'm going to kind of leave
Yeah,
it, I think, and then we can spend some time answering some questions from students.
sure. Do you want me to throw out a question now or later?
Sure, yeah, let's work on the questions now. Let's do that.
Sure. Interesting question. The student was wondering if I don't get selected for a co-op initially, do I still have a chance to get into the co-op program by reapplying in later years or not?
Yeah, great question. So that's the great thing, again, at least from Waterloo, is that you apply to co-op when you're applying to the program. So you'll know right away if you get into the co-op program or not before you even have to accept your offer. Some of our programs at Waterloo are co-op only. Some are regular only, which means co-op isn't available. And that's usually because there's extra experiential learning opportunities. Like, for example, if you studied aviation with us, co-op isn't available, but it's because you're going to be off flying planes. So that's kind of the trade-off there. But the majority of our programs do have both. So if you're interested, apply to co-op. And then if you don't get in, most of our programs, there will be an opportunity for you to apply later on because typically co-op doesn't start until your second year. So it really does depend if space opens up. So if other students have changed their minds. But yeah, typically you can, if you're not admitted to co-op right away for your program, once you're on campus, you can chat with your academic advisor and try to get into that for year two. If you don't get into co-op, though, pretty much everything that's available to our co-op students is also available to our students who are in the regular stream. So they'll have the professional workshops, so interview skills, and there's people who will look at resumes and still connections to employers for summer jobs and things like that.
Another question. What are the differences between the terms co-op and internship?
Okay, great question. So, at least again from the Waterloo side, internship is usually in a program. An internship happens once. So, in your program with your classes, if you have an internship, it's usually somewhere within your program. It's once with one company, which is still a great experience, and it's usually a little bit longer. And then sometimes it's paid, sometimes it's not. Whereas co-op with us, it's something that you're going to alternate between. So, that's when you're going to go back and forth between study terms and work terms and study terms and work terms until you graduate. And that allows you to try out different jobs and they're paid. So it's kind of the co-ops are kind of smaller snippets of getting being able to test drive a career, but they're paid and you get more of them.
Will co-op increase the length of your degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. So co-op does add some time. Typically for our programs at Waterloo, going into co-op can add about 8 months or basically a year. So I usually tell students if you do a co-op program, it'll take 5 years to complete your degree versus 4 years. But again, remember when you graduate, you're not only going to have a degree, you're going to have up to 2 years of work experience and paid. So usually that extra year becomes worth it, especially when I see a lot of our students have jobs already lined up. That extra year kind of makes them stand out a little bit more.
Great. Um, a lot of very specific questions about specific fields.
Sure.
Like do you recommend for biomed? I'm seeing a lot of things like that. Uh,
Okay.
but, um, but how about perhaps instead of you could answer how they would go about um, discovering what possible co-op opportunities there are.
Yeah, that's a good question. Excuse me. So again, this will be the Waterloo example, and I'm sure it's similar at other schools. But with us, we've got connections with 8,000 employers. So it's by far the largest program in the world with the connections that we have. And we have our own website called Waterloo Works. So the term before you go on your first work term, you're going to be taking your classes, but you're also going to be doing basically an online module where you're learning about our co-op system and how it works. So you also have a co-op advisor. That's your kind of point person who will walk you through the process and who you can go to if you have any challenges or anything like that. But they will, yeah, teach you how to get your resume ready. So we've got a bit of a template that will help you get together. And then that's where we have the interview workshop skills. So you can do a bunch of simulations and get prepared on what questions you might be asked and how to best answer them and things like that. But then when you're ready to apply, you'll go onto our website, and that's where all of our employers have the jobs listed specifically for Waterloo students. And you can go through and search by different parameters. So you could search by type of job. So there might be some that are tagged like engineering specifically, or arts, or business, or things like that. You can search by location. So majority of our jobs are in Ontario, probably Kitchener-Waterloo, GTA and Ottawa are our biggest regions, but we often have students doing jobs out in Alberta and BC, and sometimes into California. And like I was in Scotland and the UK, and we have students in Hong Kong, so all over the world. And yeah, so you can go through and take a look at the requirements that the employer is looking for. And if you feel that you match those or you'd be a good candidate, you can upload your resume. The employer will go through that, select who that they want to interview. And then the interview is either done online or sometimes they'll come right to campus because we have our own building dedicated to co-op as well. And then it is a competitive process, so there could be other students applying to that same job. So you've got to make sure you're standing out from them with your skills and your experiences, which is why things like labs and your extracurriculars, those do matter as well. So you've got more experiences you can draw on. But yeah, our students can actually apply to up to 50 jobs per term or 50 jobs at a time. And sometimes students will make full use of that. But yeah, you can go through. We don't have a set list of who our employers are. For different reasons, but we do have a blog online. If you just search like U Waterloo Co-op jobs, you can get an example of where some of our students have worked, and you can definitely see the types of jobs that they're doing there as well. And then I'll note that probably about 80% of our students find jobs this way, but that doesn't mean you can't find your own job. If you've got your own connection or there's a company that you'd really love to work with and they're not one of our employers, you can always reach out to them and set that up as well. That's totally fine. Basically, as long as you're gaining skills and you're getting paid, that would work for a co-op credit for us.
Great. Just a follow up to that, someone was asking, um, let's say you're part of the co-op program, and they were just concerned, what if I can't find anything? What's the next step?
Yeah, that question comes up quite a bit, and I get the nervousness of it. And I think again, this is probably the advantage of when you come to Waterloo. We not only have a lot of employers, but we've got a lot of professionals and upper year students who are there to support you as well. So I'll just start by saying like our employment rate is consistently in like the mid to high 90%. And my experience is that students who put in the effort, they're often finding a job. The kind of caveat would be here, like your first job, you could be applying for positions that upper year students with 4 or 5 work terms of experience have. So you do want to be realistic. I found that the first job is maybe, yeah, not the dream job, but it's to get something to show that you're employable, gain skills, and then you kind of scaffold up to like a little bit more specific to what you want to do later as you go. But we do have, again, your co-op advisor is there that can go to, or that you can go to help you figure out what have your job search skills been. Maybe like people who don't customize their cover letter or resume, or they kind of take it for granted that they're going to get a job, they maybe have a little bit more difficulty. Or sometimes people think they're really good at interviews. And then they go to the interview workshop skills and realize, oh, I have only been giving one-word responses to questions. So we're going to help you develop those as well. So we've got lots of supports in place. The first term is usually the most challenging just because everything's new. You don't have as much experience as some other students. That's why even getting part-time jobs now or participating in co-op in high school is really beneficial, because you're going to come into university with a resume already started and things that you can draw on. So that's a good thing to think about before you come and start a co-op program. And then at the end of the day, if you're still unsuccessful finding an employer, we do have some systems in place. We have something called We Accelerate at Waterloo, which will allow our first-time students who aren't finding jobs easily gain some skills, do some consulting work with some of our connections in the industry, make connections with other co-op students, and kind of set yourself up for that next round.
That's great. Thank you very much. Sure. I'll just say, because there are a lot of medical school questions.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like you probably answered this, but I'm going to just say it anyways.
Sure.
Do medical schools provide the opportunities for students to participate in research and internships along with clinical rotations?
Yeah, great question. So I'll just start by saying we don't have a medical school at Waterloo, so probably can't speak to that as much as I'll encourage people to go and chat with those who do. But what I can say is that yes, there's going to be lots of opportunities when you go to medical school, or at Waterloo we do a pharmacy and optometry, or maybe you choose dentistry or physiotherapy or vet school. Yes, typically when you get to those levels, because they're kind of the professional school, you're going to start with some undergrad first. Once you get there, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to have clinical situations. You're going to have placements and residencies where you're going to be working alongside your professors and upper year students, but often people who are actually from the industry and can gain those skills. So it's not Like when you go to med school, it's not 4 years of just being in a classroom. You're going to have a lot of time when you're in hospitals or in rotation or things like that too. So that's why a lot of students who want to get into medical school, they actually don't mind if they're not in a co-op program at Waterloo because co-op can add some time because they know they're going to get that experiences once they get to medical school.
I have a pretty. I'm actually surprised this question came up, but it was repeated quite often. Um, let's say your co-op is not in Waterloo,
Yeah.
and you have to travel. Are there any considerations by the university for that?
It will help, but we won't set it up for you, is basically what I say. So yeah,
Okay.
sometimes students really enjoy having that opportunity, especially if they have to move to Waterloo for school. So if you're from Ottawa or maybe from Calgary, whatever it is, lots of students like to find co-op jobs back in their hometown. Parents love that as well because it gives you the opportunity to head back for 4 months because once you do a co-op program, you're kind of always doing either school or work. So that gives you a chance to maybe move back home or be closer to some of your high school friends and things like that. So it is up to you and the employer potentially to find out where you're going to be living. But we do have an off-campus housing office, and that's typically like I'll just use Ottawa as an example because we do have a lot of our students working there. They often will share, they've got a group and they'll share like this is where I lived when I was in Ottawa, and they share connections with like either subletting or landlord information or just providing helpful tips like, oh, if you were living there, maybe you should consider this area or things like that. So we won't arrange housing for you, but we have a lot of systems in place to help you kind of with that search. Also, our off-campus housing will do things like review leases and landlord contracts and things like that. So we won't leave you hanging in that regard. But yeah, if you're going to be moving every 4 months, that's probably another advantage. Not only do you become a really efficient packer and pack light, but you become pretty good at finding those 4 month rentals in different spots as well.
So a lot of questions coming in because you mentioned that there's no medical school. So I'm just
Mhm.
going to ram off some, and you can just
Okay.
say yes co-op or no co-op if you
Sure.
want.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay, sounds good. So we got let's see. I just have so many of them here. Here we are. I'm not sure what the AFM program is. That ring a bell?
Okay, that'd be our accounting and financial management program, which is co-op only. So all of our students in accounting and financial management will go into
Oh
co-op.
wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
great.
our
That's
CFA.
I got that one a lot. A lot of questions
Okay.
about that one.
Yep.
Uh-huh. So that's great. Computer science.
Yep. Computer science is either. You can do co-op or regular. The majority of our students are going through co-op in that route. And most of our
Great.
spots are on the side.
Law. I got one more after that one.
Sure. Yep. Law you can. So it's up to you. We've got either honors arts or honors arts and business, which is the same. It's just adding some business to it as well. But co-op is available there. I don't want it on your expectation that you're going to be in trial if you go into that, but you're probably going to get some experience working with law firms and different things like that. But just want to set expectations. You're not going to be running any trials or anything like that if to co-op in
Yeah.
law.
So now they're all coming in now. They all want to know. So maybe what I'll ask instead is, are there any programs that don't have co-op
Sure. Yeah,
opportunities?
let's start that way. That's probably easier. So first I'll
Yeah.
start with med school is that yeah, if you go into biomedical science or honor science at Waterloo, which are two popular routes to get the requirements to go to med school, they do not have co-op. Again, you're gonna have lots of opportunities to do research though. There's labs. You can do research with our professors. You can get volunteer opportunities at the local hospital. So you're still going to be gaining lots of experience that way. If you really want co-op and you want to go to med school, we do have options for you. You could study biology or health sciences. So those basically we've got four popular tracks that our students will take if they want to go to medical school. Biomedical science and honor science do not have co-op, so it's a little bit quicker. Biology, health sciences, you can go into co-op and still get the requirements to go into med school. So just putting that one out there. But yeah, we do have a couple aviation programs. So we have geography and aviation and science and aviation. They do not have co-op. We have a program called Knowledge Integration, which is basically our version of an arts and science. So it's for the students out there who have multiple interests and you don't want to sacrifice one for the other when you go to university. Maybe look into knowledge integration. It doesn't have co-op, but it's got some great opportunities there. They actually do a field course in the summer to a museum-rich city in Europe to take in how students are processing info. And then, honestly, Curtis, you put me on the spot here because I talk about co-op so much. I have to just double check what else may not have it. All of our engineering programs do. All of our business related programs do. All of our math programs do. So I think we got
So
them all.
really most, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, most. And then some
most
programs,
programs.
it's up to the student whether they want to go into co-op or not.
Yeah, and it kind of just, I suppose you could just think about it. Is it a difficult place to place someone if it's dangerous or like you mentioned flight, for example, we couldn't do
Yeah.
a co-op for
Yeah, and
flight,
like
obviously.
our aviation students spend their like in Canada, as I'm sure you can imagine, most of your
Yeah.
summer's going to happen, or sorry, most of your flight time is going to happen in the summer. So we don't have co-op because we want to keep students available in the summer so they can get a lot of their flight hours done. So those students are still in the simulators. They're connecting with airlines and people from the industry, so they still get a lot of experience as well. It's just not through the co-op program.
I'm also getting a lot of questions, and I think I'm going to give the answer for them. A lot of the questions I'm getting are related to, you know, minimum requirements to get in and things like that. So I'm just going
Sure.
to ask students, just like I just did it myself. Google Waterloo, Google your question. Odds are the answer will pop up. I just got, for example, the exact for economics the students had asked about.
There
So
you go.
type in the program, type in Waterloo. Odds are you're going to get the answer.
I like to think our website, we've put a lot of effort into making it
It's really
Googleable.
good.
So if you,
Yeah.
yeah, if at the very least type in U Waterloo admissions, you can search by program and your curriculum that you're in. Also, if you make your way to the Waterloo booth today in the launch event, we do have some of our student ambassadors and staff there, so you can ask them. But there's also a link right there. If you click on admissions, it will take you right to the page where you can search by each individual program. But at Waterloo, our programs, a lot of our programs have an admission average in the high 70s to low 80s. Lots of people are
Mm.
surprised by that, but a majority of programs are there. But we do have some more competitive programs that do go into the low to mid 90s as well.
Yeah, that's great. I have a kind of a specific one about I think it's CS. Yeah, so it's like software development, things like that.
Sure.
Uh, so they're asking, does co-op for computer science, anyways, the students try different roles within computer science across multiple placements, or do you tend to focus on one placement?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a really good question. We really encourage students when you have multiple co-op terms. So everyone's gonna have minimum of four. Some programs you'll have up to six. And what we want students to do is really try out different things at like preferably even different employers each time. So maybe you get experience some co-op terms you're doing more research. So it could be right on campus, or we've had students work at even UBC or MIT doing research with professors. So maybe you want to do a job that's more related to that. We've got students who work for government at different levels, from municipal to the federal government, getting experience in that kind of role. We've had students who maybe are working with international companies, either they go away or they're working remotely with that company. So that's kind of a unique way to try out, like getting experience in the work setting. We've got a big entrepreneurial ecosystem in Waterloo. We've got one of the top areas for founders coming from our grads and our current students. So even if you aren't at the point where you become your own founder, maybe you want to try working in the startup environment. We've got one of the largest free incubators in North America, so they hire a lot of our students to work with them. So you might be part of a team of like three people of helping a startup scale or something like that. So yeah, different range, and we really encourage you to try that out. But at the end of the day, it is up to you. And sometimes we'll see students by the time they get to their upper years, they've maybe found a co-op job that they can see a career with, and they've maybe talked with the employer there, and like after you graduate, we'll have a spot for you. So they tend to go back, or maybe there's a project that they left off that they want to come back and complete. So that does happen. But yeah, it's up to the student at the end of the day. But we do encourage you to try out different things. And especially when it comes to computer science, we see students in a whole range of different areas. Again, sometimes it is more research and development type thing. Sometimes it is with startups. Sometimes, yeah, in California with different tech companies there. So take advantage while you can. It's 4 month intervals. Try living in different places. Try different jobs. Find out what you like, what you don't like.
I really like this one question I just got, and it says it's asking, um, uh, oh, I just lost it. The question was, um, uh, if you, where did it go? Sorry.
That's great.
Oops. Oh, what does the first few weeks look like in co-op at Waterloo?
Okay, so I'll back it up a little bit. So Yeah, most students are going to go on their first co-op term either at the end of their first year or into their second year. So you're going to have some classroom experience and some time on campus and settle in as a university student there. And then I'll just remind you that before you go on your first 4-month work term, the term before that, you're taking your regular course load and classes and homework and things like that. And then you're also preparing your resume, you're applying to jobs and going to interviews and finding that next term's job. So it's not uncommon to see, like, to go to class and you see students in like a shirt and tie or dressed up, and it's because you're either coming from or going to an interview after their class. So that's going to be happening while you're doing your classes, and it kind of begins at the beginning of that term before. Then once you have a match with an employer, it's kind of up to you and the employer how things work. You would negotiate your start date and things like that. But because a lot of our employers are hiring our students every term, they've got really good practices in place that allow you to kind of have an onboarding experience. Often there's other Waterloo co-op grads who are there, or sorry, Waterloo co-op students who are there as well. So as a team, you kind of work together or maybe branch out and have different projects, but you've got that experience of working with other students. And yeah, sometimes you are thrown right in where you pick up where the last co-op student has left off. And other times you're going to be working with your manager to maybe start that new project or whatever it might be. So it really depends on the workplace, what you're going to be doing and how that starts. But you're also going to have a co-op advisor who will check in on you, especially early on, to make sure you're settling in fine, that everything's going well, that you're getting paid as part of the process as well. But yeah, it's working a full-time job. So you don't have any classes to worry about. There's no homework going on. Usually then you've got your evenings free as well. Some students maybe sometimes take an online course just if they feel they can balance both. But yeah, so that's kind of how that looks. And I'll also say that a lot of our employers tend to be Waterloo grads who have gone through the process themselves. So they've got a good idea of what it takes to be a co-op student, and also look out for our students pretty well because they've gone through the same thing too.
That's great. I have another question about international student asking if there's any if if this program is accessible to them.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. It is, yeah. So when an international student receives their offer of admission from us, we'll also work with them on obtaining their study and their work permit so that they can do the co-op process. There's no limitations technically on co-op, but there might be some employers. For example, there might be some positions with the federal government that you need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident to be able to work with for whatever, like maybe it's security reasons or whatever it is. And then there might be some other jobs that might have some restrictions or maybe just wouldn't make sense to go into. Like, for example, some of our like accounting, I'll bring that one up again. You're going to be practicing like using Canadian laws and policies. So if you were intending to go and be an accountant in another country, for example, you're only going to be learning about the Canadian system. So that'd be one thing to think about there. But otherwise, international students have access to co-op the same as anybody else. It'd just be a few employer limitations based on what the job might be.
I'm getting a lot of questions. I know this isn't co-op related or anything, but they are. See the fear. Housing. Is it difficult to find housing if you're a Waterloo student?
Okay, good question too. Yeah, so Waterloo, we do have a first year residence guarantee. So usually about 80% of our students decide, like first year students decide to live on campus, and we've got 12 residence options right on campus. So if you want a spot to live on campus, we'll have a spot for you. For upper year students, especially if you're going on co-op and you're alternating every 4 months, if you just want a 4-month like sublease, we usually have that available, especially in our winter and our spring terms. But yeah, because we're such a university town, we've got us, Wilfrid Laurier University, Conestoga College. I think it's about a third of the city's population is students. So we've got a lot of opportunities here for you to, or lots of housing opportunities right around the university district. And then, as I said, if you're moving outside of Waterloo, that's kind of on you, but we've got some supports in place to help you out as well.
And I've honestly never been to Waterloo. Is transportation decent being a university town?
Yeah. So our students, through your student card, you'll have access to the Grand River Transit system. So we've got a bus terminal right on campus, and we also have a light rail transit system. So you just have to flash your card, and you can get to and from campus easily, whether you're just wanting to get around the region or get to Uptown or the park or the mall or whatever it is, or if you live off campus and you're coming to your classes. It's pretty easy to get around. And for our students from the GTA, we've got like busing and train system that gets to Toronto quite often as well. So to get home on weekends and things like that.
Great. Well, we've just hit our mark, 11:15.
Hey.
I want to thank everybody for the amazing questions we got. Really wholesome, great, wholesome questions that we received, I should say. And I want to say thank you to Jay for joining us and great presentation, and really got a lot of students thinking today, I think.
Perfect. Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Jay, do you mind turning off the recording? It's for some reason it's on your end.
Sure.
Oh, I can do it. Never mind.
Okay.
There we go.
Perfect.
We're good. That was great, Jay. Thanks very much for working with us.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Good to meet you.
All right. Cheers.